it don't get everything is true, but what it don't...
Boss, you can't go on ignoring this rock and roll stuff anymore. Every hotel and club in the country's wiring for information.
Hello, Groove Dogs. Welcome to the Runaway Radio Rewind, a program that looks and listens back to the heyday of one of America's truly great radio stations, the legendary and late KLOL. It's the Runaway Radio Rewind. And now, here's your host, Steve Robinson.
Welcome in. It's time for the Runaway Radio Rewind. We take a look back at the history of Rock 101 KLOL. Today on the show, we'll hear once again from Dr. Betty, a longtime guest of Stevens and Pruett, and I have another classic Uncle Waldo episode for you, so let's get going. Here's Dr. Betty.
Now, you witnessed the dynamics on the show with the personalities.
Yes.
And those who, for 11 years, came through and went in that show. And there wasn't that much turnover. People that were on that show were really there for a long, long time and remained as part of it. And that's why it gelled and developed so beautifully the way that it did. But what about some of those personal dynamics between the people in the newsroom and then the people in the control room?
I would have to say I often would stop by the newsroom as I began to know Lanny and Martha, who were initially in there, along with Kevin.
Yes.
And
we're talking about Kevin Dorsey.
Kevin Dorsey,
our commentator,
who doesn't know anymore. And Kevin was a sweet soul.
Oh, boy, was he.
A very flawed, sweet soul. And you know, I have a memory of Kevin that illustrates Kevin, but he was doing something for charity. I guess K101 was involved, and it was at the Astrodome, I think. Mm-hmm. And I took my kids to it because it was sort of a carnival type of thing. And the kids are tired and they're hungry, and they were really looking forward to it. But one of my kids had a total meltdown. And Kevin was running a booth where it was a beanbag toss or a ring toss or one of those things, and you get a stuffed animal. And he could tell that my kid was melting down. So he moves her to the front of the line. He moves the goal up to where no one could miss it. And I just thought, gosh, that's awfully sweet. He's just sweet.
He observed. He didn't miss a thing.
And
ever.
Actually, everyone on that show had a very soft spot for the elderly and the children. And I actually brought my mother to watch the show.
Did you?
I did. And when Barb came to see the show, she was in that corner recliner chair. And she was also a physician. So nothing they're going to say is going to particularly shock her. And I had clearly warned her that I might say things too. And by the end of the show, she was asleep. She fell asleep. She was almost 80 at that time, but I thought that was kind of cool that she got to see me doing that with them. But they were so gracious to her. And people, you know, who just listened to them had one view of everyone there, but I had a different view of them. And as time went on, you know, I realized, wow, they really do a lot for charity.
You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that KLOL has done more to serve the needs of this community than any other radio station in Houston. KLOL's efforts to help the people of Texas, particularly the hungry, the homeless, and the handicapped, have drawn national attention. And the station has also earned the respect and gratitude of law enforcement professionals because of its long-standing support of the Houston Police Department.
They, you know, the Stevens and Pruett Ranch, it is still going.
And that was and is very sincere, very heartfelt
It is.
move on their part to do something good for children and animals, and the combination of the two, which was kind of brilliant.
It really was. They built a lodge to help teach. I think it's just boys.
At first.
At first, is it boys and girls now?
It is.
That's wonderful. These are kids that are troubled, who would otherwise be probably incarcerated, but they are learning true ranching skills.
With real horses and real animals.
Rescued animals, real rescued horses. And I think that is a fabulous thing. So I contributed money, but I also would show up and give tetanus shots, since you need them if you're working around horses. Didn't know that, did you?
Didn't.
See, you're learning more now.
Didn't know that, did you?
And
Comes
it's very
up
important.
a lot.
Yeah, it's certainly very important. The other thing I would do is bring flu shots to the station. I'm sure you remember that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do.
And then I hired a lot of my staff in my office because they were listeners to the show, which is fascinating to me. Some of my best people, in fact, ever, came to me seeking employment. A lot of the patients, I had new patients coming in and making appointments just because they listened to the show and they thought, oh, this is an approachable doctor, which I also think we've lost a lot of now. I think if you see a doctor now, they're typing. They aren't looking at you.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. That's exactly right.
It's horrible.
I mean, I want to say, look at me. I'm over here.
Look at
But
me. Make eye contact.
They're on the screen.
They're on the screen. Yeah. Usually swearing at the screen. And I don't know what's going to happen with that. It's just dreadful. I mean, we're doing something that's technical right now, and we're actually looking at each other.
So, is there anything I've missed?
Well, maybe we could talk about the condom show.
Tell me about the condom show.
It made you sweat.
Oh.
And I'll get to the why. And I had no idea at the time, but after the one Mr. Wizard show, I thought, what we should do is buy different condoms. I do think you cut the check on that one to reimburse me for what I spent. But I bought interesting ones. I bought run-of-the-mill ones, all different brands, not knowing.
Testing them and talking about the difference.
Well, not knowing at the time that one of your biggest advertising contracts was with Trojan.
Oh, the Trojan.
Remember?
Incident. I do.
Yeah, so I walk in with these, I go, guess what I'm doing today? And I have a helium tank with me and a Sharpie pen, and you're sweating. You're doing one of these things, and I'm thinking, well, I'm not paid. I don't care. I have no flesh in this game. Good luck to you.
It was a test, one against the
I
other.
just come in and I said, gentlemen, we're testing condoms, and here's how we're going to do it.
With an inflatable helium tank.
I rented a helium tank, and I was wheeling it in, and it turned into a great show that lasted almost a week. And here is why. We would blow up condoms of different kinds. Some popped immediately, but before, as we're opening them, judging, can you open this or not, we'd say what the brand was, without knowing what the result was going to be. Now, the guys get to play. We blow it up. We label it with the brand, and if it's a good brand, it goes right up to the ceiling in the station.
And floats at the top.
It floats
with
at
the
the
helium.
top. So, the next hour, Lanny and Dana at that time followed the show whenever we did that particular demo. So they start to report on it. And I'm driving home after a long day of work, and whoever your afternoon or evening person was, it may have been Grego and it may have been
Moby at the
it
time.
wasn't Moby.
Oh, not that
ever.
Early. Yeah,
Might have been Dave.
Might have been Dave.
Yeah.
Or Crash.
Yeah, could have been. So they're doing the condom report.
So in the radio business, this is known as audience recycling.
Yes.
From morning to midday to afternoon to night.
But
although it's not the kind of radio
not typical
audience recycling that they teach you in radio class.
No, but it was so excellent. It was effective. And when I look back on it, I'm thinking, wow, from a perspective of something that lasts, it was almost a little mini evergreen.
Oh, all day. It's like, well, it's still floating up at the ceiling.
But there were 2 that hung on for 5 days. So it lasted for 5 days. And you know who the winner was? It was Trojan.
Oh. And we were thinking,
you're
what
welcome.
If it's not?
I know. I was surprised. I mean, I had no idea what I was going to expect, but
excellence in broadcasting is what this is.
And it actually was a good public service.
Sure.
Because the ones that immediately rupture, you got a problem. You probably don't want to buy those. And I wasn't doing any advertising. It was a diffusion experiment like in Mr. Wizard. How quickly does helium go through that membrane, and the faster that goes through, the faster other things can. In terms of germs, which was a big issue at the time, HIV being a virus, but pregnancy and the other things we are still concerned with. And, I look at the youth now, and my kids are old enough to have to look at youth now, which is interesting. I'm a grandma, but they're a lot more conservative than we were.
Thanks, Doc. If you haven't done so, like us on Facebook at Runaway Radio Rewind. We also would love it if you would hit up runawayradiorewind.com. There's a lot going on there. All right, it's time for Uncle Waldo. Enjoy.
Ignorant moron and all-around stupid type person. As authored by C. Keaton Municipal Golf Course. Out of nowhere, a genie appears. Why, it's Genie Big Bruno. Uncle Waldo is startled. I'm startled.
Uncle Waldo, you look startled.
Who the heck are you?
Who am I? I am the genie Big Bruno the Magnificent, and I will grant you one and only one wish. But let me tell you, before I grant you the wish, you will have to sacrifice something in return, Uncle Waldo.
One and only one wish.
Yes,
huh?
Be careful what you wish, Uncle Waldo.
Well,
remember, you have to sacrifice something.
My only wish is to have a great golf game from now on.
Oh, Uncle Waldo. Are you kidding? Remember what I said? You're going to have, well, okay, I'm going to grant your wish, but you're going to have to sacrifice, let me see. Oh, I got it. Your sex life.
Okay. Whoa, the plot thickens. Time passes. Again, Uncle Waldo is at the golf course. And again, the genie reappears.
Uncle Waldo! How's your golf game coming along, Uncle Waldo?
Mr. Genie, just great. Couldn't be better.
And, how's your sex life,
Just fine. Fantastic.
What do you mean, fine? Just fine? Tell me something. How many times have you had the, over the last year since I granted your wish? How many times?
12 times.
12 times?
12 times.
That's only once a month.
Yeah.
You call that a good sex life?
I think it's pretty good for an 85-year-old priest.
Huh?
Without a car.
What?
With leprosy.
Oh, now, wait.
You've been listening to the Runaway Radio Rewind. Join us next week for more memories and goodness for the intelligentsia from the people who made the former KLOL what it was. Find us online at runawayradiorewind.com and be sure to grab your Runaway Radio gear. You can find the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. Show us your dog, and we'll see you next week on the Runaway Radio Rewind.